Hi y'all, welcome to IndieQuest where we go through all sorts of games to find some hidden gems. We'll be trying out 5 games today that I found on Steam's new releases page. I'll review them one by one and rate them on a scale from 0 to 10. But the rating will be contextualized around what the game is. If I'm giving a game a 9 out of 10, I mean it is amazing for a $1 game developed by a single person. Not that it is as good as Witcher or something. Fruit Salad is a casual puzzle game where you have to drop fruit in the box. Fruits of the same kind merge into larger fruits, kind of like the 2048 game but with physics.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. Intel has told us there are at least 7.
Okay, I already see one. Give me. Okay.
They're the same picture.
The price on this is $1.50, so I was not expecting much from it. And it is really not much, but at least you get exactly what you would expect, so if you're into these types of games, you might give it a try. With that in mind, here are some drawbacks I would like to point out. First of all, the physics in this are not really pleasant to interact with. Even though you can make some cool moves, in most situations, it does not feel like you can control it. This leads to the second issue I have with Fruit Salad, which is the lack of comeback options. If you have dropped a cherry in the corner and have some larger fruit on top of it, it will sit there until the end of the game. You can theoretically match those on top of it to create some space, but you will most likely end up flooding the rest of it. Before I get to the next one, behold the pinnacle of my runs in Fruit Salad. Another thing that feels wrong about this game is when large fruits get stuck. I had this happen a couple of times, and you can't really do anything about it.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
It would feel so much better if they could slightly bend under pressure so that you could push them down. Lastly, the way your run ends is not cool either. Basically, it finishes the game when you go over the top of the box, but why? It would be so much better if it finished with you spilling the fruits outside of the box. Summing up, the game is definitely worth the money, but I would not necessarily call it a hidden gem. Almost all the time I was playing it I felt like I didn't really have an impact on it. To illustrate my point, here is a run where I was spamming fruits to the same spot to see how far I will get. I'm giving Fruit Salad a 6 watermelons out of 10 and moving on. When working on this video, I plan to make the assortment of games as diverse as possible. And it is partially the case today and will be in my future uploads. But I could not resist adding this game on the list today, as I thought it would be interesting to draw some comparisons. Basically, Out of Shapes is the exact same thing as Fruit Salad but with shapes instead of fruits. It is much less polished and a lot more simplistic, and playing it actually made me appreciate Fruit Salad more. Out of Shapes feels like someone's first project, and I'm not saying it's bad or anything. It's just that the team behind Fruit Salad is clearly more experienced and has put more effort into it. Surprisingly, Out of Shapes has some of the same issues I had with the previous game. On the one hand, the physics here are more diverse, as each object has a different shape, whereas in Fruit Salad they were all more or less the same. It is a good idea, I appreciate it. But on the other hand, straight angles make the issues of figures getting locked in even worse. Just like in Fruit Salad, you can get some of the objects stuck and have no option to work around it. This seems to be the issue with the core concept rather than with its realization. But I'm now curious to see which of these 2 games will be first to improve the experience. I'm giving Out of Shapes 3 stuck squares out of 10 and moving on. I'm gonna cheat a bit on this one, as I've spent a significantly larger amount of time playing it compared to other games featured today. But this one, I'm definitely calling a hidden gem. Samawa Idle is an idle game where you kill slimes with the help of 3 towers. I have always kind of enjoyed playing idle games in the background, and I've actually tried quite a number of them. As a self-proclaimed idle game expert, I'm qualified to say Samawa Idle is worth giving it a shot. The game is rather basic right now, but it is actively being developed. The dev is a legend, taking tons of feedback from the players and quickly implementing some of it to the game. In fact, even some things I suggested made it to the game. A literal example, here's the comment I posted saying it was hard to distinguish damage numbers. And here's the patch that was released the next day. I'm not gonna go into much detail about the gameplay, as by the time you're watching this it has probably been changed a lot. From what I've seen so far, I can tell it will only get better, so it is definitely worth trying out. Don't expect Tap Titan's 2 levels of depth here, but it is still a really fun idle game to check out. I'll definitely keep an eye on its updates and revisit it in future. I'm giving Samawa Idle a 9 hidden gems out of 10 and moving on. Next on the list we have Hold the Door, which is a mini tower defense game. The game is small, but for the price tag it has, it is more than enough. The main idea is that you don't have to build around a fixed path here. Instead, you create your own maze with barricades and towers, which is the approach I definitely prefer. You have 3 levels of difficulty to choose from, where the number of waves may range from 5 to 30. The selection of towers is pretty decent, although I would say it requires some tweaking, as the basic turrets are too strong compared to other towers. What I enjoyed the most here was the system of tower upgrades. Aside from the regular upgrade that improves the tower's damage, you get some unique upgrades for every tower. For example, the turret has a focused aim ability that makes it deal more damage the longer it attacks the same tower. The sniper tower has a long-range scope upgrade that makes it land stronger hits when the enemies are far from it. This goes on for all the other towers, and some of them even have multiple unique upgrades. The game is kind of hard too. The turrets are OP, but when you decide to experiment with other towers, you should be ready for some challenge. I actually enjoyed the difficulty a lot, as I'm kind of sick of tower defense games where you win no matter what you do. As always, there are some issues with the game that I'd like to point out. First of all, you can't assign targets to your towers, which is a must-have feature in my opinion. I'm unable to make the sniper tower attack the target with the most health, so it ends up finishing enemies that were already getting eaten by my turrets. Another thing I wish the game had is an infinite defense mode. I understand the game revolves around making the most from the resources you have within the limited amount of rounds, but I don't see how adding an infinite mode would hurt that, especially if the game won't be balanced around it. Just make it as an addition, not the main focus, as I would personally enjoy experimenting with towers, upgrades, and synergies in a longer run. Otherwise, I had a blast playing it, and I definitely recommend checking the game out. I'll surely get back to it in future to see how the updates go. I'm giving Hold the Door a 7 Necromancers out of 10 and moving on. Touch Force is the last game we have for today, and it is a pretty much classic bullet hell. The last time I played something like this was 10 years ago on Miniclip, so this will be a review from an outsider's perspective. I don't know the meta of the genre today, but I hope it will still be useful for those of you who are in a similar situation. So I went to it with some ambiguous feelings. It is clearly an indie game developed by a very small team, so I was anticipating a janky and clunky experience. And the way it started did not make the situation any better. The huge black borders by the sides of my screen made it feel like I had just launched a mobile port from 5 years ago. But all this became completely irrelevant the moment I actually launched the game. To my surprise, it feels snappy as hell. And once again, I'm not sure if it is easy to achieve or if it is common for indie bullet hell games. It's just that my expectations were exceeded. The game welcomes you with a brief tutorial, and I wish I paid attention at this point. It explains that holding the left mouse button makes you shoot, and the right mouse button is responsible for the laser. You can pick up small blue things to replenish your laser charges and slightly different blue things to improve your power. I liked how picking up power thingies both adds health and makes you stronger. It is a great idea for balance, as it encourages you to play safe and rewards you for not making mistakes. I had an absolute blast at first, but then I reached the first boss and my easy days were over. The thing immediately annihilated me, so I tried again. I was ready for the first attack, but it still got me, so I tried again. This time, I decided to play as safe as possible, so I was waiting for his machine gun attacks to finish before I could go back under him and do my damage. This wasn't the worst idea, but it still felt like I was doing something wrong. There was almost no option to attack him without getting damaged. And even though I knew it as an indie game I bought for $2 and everything was possible, I still had a hunch it's my fault. I was definitely missing something. I braced myself and got all my patience together, prepared to swoop in for a couple of attacks and defeat the thing no matter how much time it takes. But as I was clearing trash before the boss fight, I accidentally stopped firing and discovered I'm not being damaged. That's what I was missing. You can stop firing, change the position while you're immune, and get back to attacking when it's safe. With this sacred knowledge that I skipped in the tutorial, I defeated the boss without an issue and moved on. And now is the part where I list my issues with the game. And I don't really have any with touch force. At first, I wanted to say that being immune while not firing is too opus, but then I got further into the game and now I think it's kind of balanced. The runs are fairly long, and even if you're playing safe, you will eventually get damaged. I'm giving it 9 like buttons out of 10 and hope you won't forget to subscribe to meet again in the next one.